Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our second Thursday conversation series. My name is Elias Eli Valentine II, and I have the honor of serving as the chairman of the Greenville County Democratic Party. On behalf of our entire leadership team, I want to thank you for listening in and supporting the LGBTQ community. This month, we're highlighting and celebrating Pride. And tonight, our discussion is entitled Being Proud, an LGBTQ conversation. Before I get to our amazing panelists, I want to share some context and information on why it's so important we celebrate Pride all across the world. So what's in a name? Why the word pride? The term pride represents an important aspect in our community. It goes back to 1969 with Brenda Howard, a bisexual woman who is affectionately known as the Mother of Pride. Her work in organizing the first LGBTQ Pride March, which occurred on a Sunday in June, was also a momentous and foresight event because it set in motion what we now celebrate as Pride Month. She set up activities around the march, which created the basis for weeks of celebration around the globe. Pride is also a beautiful term because we're honoring the uniqueness of our individuality. Honor is an antonym to stigma, and stigma is something our community has been combating on a societal scale overtly for centuries, and we must confront the equally damaging covert discrimination the LGBTQ plus community is subjected to during our current time in history. It's worth knowing in both a scary and relevant terms in today's conversation around social justice, the treatment the community in New York City was facing pre-Stonewall. This event is often noted as a pivotal moment in our history. The consistent discrimination and harassment by local law enforcement officials in safe spaces angered and upset the LGBTQ community, and one night they decided to fight back, and it led to a multi-day demonstration now known as the Stonewall Riots. However, the systematic oppression and marginalization were not new to the community. Recently, before the Stonewall Riots, they lobbied then the newly elected mayor to prevent the police from entrapping members of the community to then arrest them as sexual deviants. They were fighting local municipality officials who technically were not, and I'm quoting for those that can't see me, violating the law by refusing to serve the queer community. But they were actively withholding liquor licenses to establishments who would provide a safe haven and a place that the community can fellowship without fear. Led by a true coalition of beautiful humans, transgender, lesbian, queer, non-binary, and gay folk came together to demand change. This catalyst brought about a heightened level of resistance and organization to an already tight-knit community. We should be educating folks in our elementary schools and in our middle schools and high schools on the lives of transformative people like Marsha Pay It No Mind Johnson or Sylvia Rivera, two iconic trans activists who fought against discrimination within our own community. We should be highlighting the groundbreakers like Jean O'Leary and Midge Costanza, championing my fellow Boricua activist Pedro Julio Serrano, prominent attorneys and civil rights legends like Frank Kameny, and historic leaders like Ernestine Eckstein, and organizing Dynamo, who is one of two Black women to grace the cover of Ladder, the first national lesbian publication. These are the stories we should be celebrating every day of the year, not just in the month of Pride. But tonight, I want to introduce you to three more history makers, cut from the same cloth as these amazing and remarkable figures from our US history. I want to start with Regina. Gina was born and raised in Coney Island, section of Brooklyn, New York. Regina Duggins moved to Charleston, South Carolina in 2010, and she recently received her doctoral degree in organizational leadership with an emphasis in K-12 education and policy. Regina serves on the District 20 Constituent School Board, advocating for our students and teachers. She is the founder of the amazing organization Charleston Black Pride, which is a leader across the state in advancing LGBTQ issues. Additionally, she is the founder of Black Girl Magic's mentoring program, serves as the education director for the League of Women Voters in Charleston, and is a South Carolina parent advocate for Charleston Rise. She also serves as a reading interventionist for the Charleston County School District. Regina is a local poet, self-published author of 2 books, raises 5 children, and is a proud grandmother and counts those as her biggest and best achievements. Her mission for starting Charleston Black Pride, which I hope we get to more in this conversation, is to highlight and bring awareness, inclusivity, and acceptance of the LGBTQ plus individuals of color who are multifaceted, talented, educated, cultured, and artistic within our community. Thank you so much, Regina, for joining us tonight. I'm so excited to get to know you better through this conversation. Our next panelist is Jared Wiggins, a Greenville native and now calls Greenville home. Jared is currently the Associate Director of Strategic Communications at Furman University. He is a proud member of the South Carolina Equality Board of Directors, joining to assist in the fight to protect the entire LGBTQ community in South Carolina. With a passion for protecting the community via anti-discrimination policies within the workplace and housing sector, Jared uses his skills in the public sector as well as the private sector. Jared is formerly in charge of new business and strategy at Slant, where he helped grow revenue by 244%. He's the co-host of Podmeadow, South Carolina's only progressive-leaning podcast focused on South Carolina state politics and issues. Jared serves his community on the board of directors of the Pleasant Valley Connection, Greenville Polo Classic, and Greenville Young Professionals. He's also served on numerous boards, including Greenville Little Theater, Imagine Upstate, and Greenville County Democratic Party previously. He's a 2019 graduate of the South Carolina Clyburn Fellowship and a Minnesota native, where he was student body president at St. Cloud State. Jared now lives in Greenville with his boyfriend Scott and their daughter, and 2 golden doodles, Memphis and Rowan. Thank you so much, Jared, for joining us. Our last panelist tonight is Pat Patterson. Pat is an adjunct professor of theater at Midlands Technical College and a real estate agent with Hubbard Bauer Real Estate and Property Management in Columbia. He currently serves as on the board of South Carolina Equality, PAC, the Political Action Committee, in addition to being a founding member of the South Carolina Equality Coalition. He has served on numerous boards, including the Workshop Theater, the South Carolina Gay and Lesbian Business Guild, AIDS Benefit Foundation, and the AIDS Benefit Foundation of South Carolina, and as a division command for Sigma Nu Fraternity. He was selected as one of the state newspapers 20 Under 40 Young Business Leaders in 2006, and was a member of the 2007 class of Leadership Columbia. In the guise of his alter ego, the drag character Patio Furniture, Pat has hosted shows and events since 1998, raising awareness and over $1.3 million for a variety of wonderful causes and organizations. Pat earned his BA from Wofford College, a master's in education for student affairs from the University of South Carolina, and will earn a master's in arts and communication this summer from the College of Charleston, and will begin taking on the daunting task of a PhD in education administration. He is the son of Dwight and the late Liz Patterson of Spartanburg. In addition to his brother and sister and their spouses, his family includes beautiful nieces and the amazing nephews and his Westie, Paisley. So those are our great panelists, and you have heard enough from me, so I'm going to get right into our conversation. I'm going to start this wonderful conversation with Pat. Pat, can you share with us the evolution of Pride as you've seen it across the state, and speak to the amazing philanthropy that takes place, but also the amazing philanthropy that you do within the community throughout the year?
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for having me and our other panelists with you tonight for this great discussion. And I need to apologize. There's a storm happening at my house right now, so I'm afraid it's affecting my internet signal a little bit. So if I fade out, I apologize in advance. But as far as the evolution of Pride, right now we're so blessed to have so many celebrations for our community. I mean, you look at Upstate Pride, and they have expanded over the past 10 years to include not just the festival in downtown Spartanburg, but this month they're hosting their Upstate Black Pride events in Greenville. They really want to reach across the upstate. In Columbia, where our first state pride festivals occurred, we still have South Carolina State Pride, famously hot South Carolina Pride, and that happens in the fall. But in the early days of that Pride Festival, they were the only pride organization in the state. And so the Gay and Lesbian Pride Movement, as it was known at that time, tried to host festivals around the state. 1 year in Myrtle Beach, 1 year in Greenville. But traditionally that's been held here in Columbia. But all of our communities need celebrating. So Myrtle Beach, it's not with regularity, but every year they try to have some type of pride event, whether it be a festival or a street fair, or 1 year they had a business expo. And then of course you got Charleston, probably our most visible city in the state as far as tourism. And 10 years ago, Charleston Pride started in North Charleston, I should point out. The first year we held it was in North Charleston. The first 2 years, it was actually held in the city of North Charleston, later moving downtown and into the organization that it is today. And then, of course, a couple of years ago, Regina helped us expand the Pride umbrella even more in the Low Country. And I'll let her talk more about Charleston Black Pride and those events. And just last week, a little neighborhood in North Charleston, where Pride started in the Low Country, held Park Circle Pride. So I think, to me, what that says is that all of our communities are taking pride in their local identities, and we're seeing more and more events happen in local areas. Rock Hill, South Carolina, later this month will have a pride event going on all day. And then of course, Aiken, Augusta, all of our friends in the Aiken area cross the river over into Georgia and spread some tourism dollars over there, but they still celebrate Pride. But I think it goes back to a little bit of gay history. A lot of folks don't realize this, but when Pride started in Columbia, it was a march and a rally. They marched to the State House and they held a rally. Both of those terms have a very political and very strong connotation to them, as opposed to parades and festivals, which are more celebratory. And I think that speaks to how far our state has come. No longer are we demanding rights through the festivals, through the parades. We're celebrating our identity and asking to be taken as members of the community. Don't get me wrong, we still need to fight for those rights, and we still got a lot of great organizations that are doing that. But I think just in a quick little nutshell, that's your 5-minute history of Pride in South Carolina. And I'm very proud to give a quick shout out to 2 organizations, the College of Charleston, which has started an LGBTQ plus archives for LGBTQ plus life in the Low Country, and Historic Columbia Foundation, which next week will kick off their statewide LGBTQ plus history project, trying to document these events so that we can always know more and continue to learn about how we got where we are today. As far as the philanthropy, South Carolina has always been a challenge. We are not a very rich state. We are not a state that has a very visible, or has not had a very visible LGBTQ plus population with very deep pockets until recently. And now we see philanthropists like Linda Kettner in the Low Country, whose dad started Food Lion grocery stores, using her resources to help be one of the first openly lesbian candidates in the state of South Carolina. or I don't want to out too many people because I know that folks who are a little bit older than I am are still enjoying their privacy or still living a somewhat in the closet life, which I personally don't understand, but I'll respect it. But there are some deep pockets. But most importantly, I think we all know we're in Pride Month, and all the big box retailers, all the corporations are now trying to fight for our community's dollars. And what we need to acknowledge is that outside of this month, we'll take your money and we'll use it to put on pride festivals, but we'll also use it to create resources to help LGBTQ plus young people, to help our trans brothers and sisters, to help eliminate violence, to help provide safer schools. And there's so many, the list goes on. I don't want to get on a soapbox. But when it comes to philanthropy, it all starts with each and every one of us. I tell people at my drag shows all the time, each dirty little dollar bill that they tip Patio Furniture gets donated back to charity. And you don't think that $1 can make a difference, but when your dollar and your dollar and your dollar and your dollar all come together, just today, I went to the bank and cashed out the tips that I've raised so far this month and was able to write checks for over $1,200 to organizations in our state. And that's all from you all, everyone out there who's come to one of my shows in the past 10 days. So everybody do your little part, and that's how we're going to make South Carolina a better place. So it's that, plant one flower and you got a flower. Throw some seeds out into the field and let them bloom, and each one of those seeds will give you one flower, but the field of flowers is a pretty sight. So let's go sow some seeds of philanthropy, everybody, and let's make Pride last 12 months out of this year.
Pat, I love that was so eloquent how you brought and tied everything together. I think so many times when we're in the struggle, it's hard to see the necessary change, but you were able to really show us how far we've moved and how younger folks who are out there in the fight can say it is possible, because we're not marching in anger, we're able to celebrate in joy. So I love the way you said that. Was beautiful. And you're right, we do have a lot more marching we need to do, but we're able to be out and open and celebrate. So I appreciate that. And I was definitely going to highlight how philanthropic you are personally, but I will get to gushing on you later. That was an excellent way to start off our conversation. I want to go to Regina. Regina, tell us a little bit about what drove you as a leader in the community to start Charleston Black Pride. What was the need that you saw in the community?
Thank you for having me, and thank you to our wonderful panel and all those that tuned in. The reason why I felt that I saw the vision to start Charleston Black Pride was I felt that there was a need to uplift the voices that I felt was voiceless, which were people of color. I was on the Pride board, Charleston Pride board, for about a year and a half. And I felt that as a member, I wasn't being active enough and doing my part. I'm big in the role of representation matters. And I just felt that that pocket was not opening enough people of color to come in and still feel comfortable to want to join or to want to be out in a lot of the activities and events. So with meeting with a few people from the community who expressed the same interest is how we grew the board. And we just sat and talked about some of the issues and concerns that we felt the people in our community was not being addressed. It was more than just parties. We wanted to actually focus on financial literacy. We've had home buyers seminars, and within a home buyer seminar, we were happy to have a few families actually purchase a home. We just want to see growth. Yeah, and we've been out almost a year and a half. 2 years in October will be our anniversary. So to see those changes really made me feel that I was headed in the right direction with Charleston Black Pride. Being able to know that there is someone who looks like you, who's been through the struggles you've been through, makes the LGBTQ of color organizations stand stronger. It also makes people have a sense of autonomy that wants to come out and do more. I wasn't starting Charleston Black Pride as a separate organization to make anyone feel alienated, because it's open for all. But I wanted people to know that they have someone who's going to be there and standing in the spaces and places at the table, fighting and speaking on their behalf. And that looks like them. And that's a big thing, especially here in South Carolina, when a lot of times Black voices are silenced, or they're not empowered to speak about whom they are, due to, we know that this is the Bible Belt. We know that Charleston is the holy city. So a lot of time religion plays a big factor in the of color community. And so we're fighting different barriers and stigmas that others non-Black would not face. So we wanted to make sure with Charleston Black Pride that everyone was welcome and that everyone had a voice. Some of it was to show opportunities that was in the community that they did not know about. And so making sure that we amplify the voices of the trans community. Later on, I'll speak about when we did actually have a trans woman murdered here, and how we stepped up to make sure that we covered that and to be of support to the community and to the families. We just want to make sure that we're providing like wraparound services. We want to make sure that mental health is also being addressed. I work closely with HIV and AIDS awareness organizations here, because I've had a family member die of HIV AIDS, and I know how that felt. So we're not just out here for the performance aspect. We highlight everything that deals with people of color, how we survive and thrive each day. So those are just some of the things that Charleston Black Pride has done and will continue to do as an LGBTQ of color organization.
I love that you highlighted the opportunities, because I think that's how we have to always frame it. There are challenges, but there are also opportunities to grow and to learn and to fix some of the ways we might have zigged where we should have zagged. And I love that your outlook is inclusivity and representation, because I feel that is so valuable, so valuable. So thank you so much for joining us. I want to kick it to Jared. And Jared, you are so passionate, and you can feel when you were speaking on the issue last year. You organized and spoke to the discrimination that the LGBTQ community in Greenville was facing, specifically when our Greenville County Council was discussing the anti-LGBT ordinance. Can you share why that was important to you and why you thought it was an issue that you wanted to champion?
Yeah, so I mean, first off, thanks for having me here tonight, and Pat and Gina, it's nice to see both of you and get to share some space with y'all. Last year, it feels like an eternity ago because of COVID, but it was really just January of 2020 where a battle started at Greenville County Council about rescinding an old 1996 ordinance that pretty much just said that a traditional family lifestyle of a man and a woman is what was acceptable in Greenville County. Because of that, there were repercussions. For example, like the Olympic torch got put in a van when it hit the Greenville County line coming from Spartanburg, and it was taken out in the city of Greenville. They let them run through the city for a little bit, and then it was put back in a van and then taken out of Greenville County. So there was pushback back in the late 90s, and then this stays on the books until 2020. And the reason we speak out ties in directly with what Pat and Gina were sharing. There are Pride festivals that these two make happen. Gina throws a great party from what I've heard. I've heard the festival is great. I can't wait to get down there myself. Pat is, regardless of which, queens they bring in from a certain national television show, Pat is the crown jewel of every Pride festival. And there are a lot of my dollars that I have slipped into various parts of your outfits. So I'm glad they go to great causes. But they recognize, they both share that we have Pride events to celebrate how far we've come and a lot of the achievements we've had. And in those festivals, we also do connect to resources and pull our community together. But I think what's missed sometimes is, and especially from the ally community, but even honestly, from a lot of white gay men like myself who can walk down the street and they aren't outed immediately. We have this invisibility shield per se, where we can hide and mask ourselves at times when we need to, that others in the community can't. And so because of that, I think we've become separated from some of the issues that still remain. So what I mean by that is there was a lot of involvement and action and fight and rallies and protest up through, you know, the 2007, 10, 12 era, when we were fighting for gay marriage and you know, equality across the country. When that happened, a lot of folks perceived that, oh, well, the LGBTQ community is equal. Equality has been achieved. And that's not the case. There are still a lot of issues on the books that negatively impact our community on a daily basis, which then in turn negatively impacts the mental health and the ability for our community to financially thrive and to find jobs and to find safe places to live. And so I think it's important that when issues like this come up, that we fight, that we honestly, you know, throw a few punches, fight like hell, because that's what folks did to start our movement for equality. And we cannot stop doing that until we've achieved truly full equality. So it wasn't just me last year. There were dozens of others. There were other organizations. I was, you know, proud to play my small part in whatever movement we could. But I thought it was really important to say that just because marriage is legalized, there are other issues in this county that we need to address. And in the state, we still don't have a hate crimes bill in the state. We still don't have housing discrimination protection in the state. Some, you know, folks can, you know, we still see dangers on the street. We see folks who are getting killed because of who they are, or even just the perception of who they are. We see folks in our community struggling with mental health disorders that aren't being adequately funded and supported. So we have to fight. We have to do whatever small part we can. I think it makes people uncomfortable at times to step into the fight like that. They maybe feel like they're not qualified, or they aren't an eloquent enough speaker. But you know what? Sometimes we just need people there standing and supporting and showing that we have a community. So whatever role you think you can play in a movement like that, play that role. And let me tell you, we also make it fun. When we get done with meetings like this, we go celebrate together. We go hang out. We continue to build our community. So, you know, the Greenville County stuff was crap last year, and we still have more work to do. We have a ton of work to do at the State House, but we have to stay focused on getting these horrible bills off the books that are still here in our state, and making this truly a safe place for the next generation of gays who are starting to come to the first Pride Festival, and honestly making me feel a little old, but we have to make it a safe place and a better place for them to grow up, so that hopefully they don't face some of the hurdles that we did.
You are young at heart, sir. You are young at heart. So it doesn't matter how old you get, you'll always be young at heart. But Jared, I want to stay with you because you brought up some really good points. And I think part of obtaining power, which we all know is how things happen, is playing this inside-outside track. So what Stonewall did is they played the outside track, and they played it very smartly. They were rioting and marching and pushing, but then they also knew they had to find allies on the inside. So one of the things that you and I have talked about is the new wave that we're seeing, an increase in the number of LGBTQ candidates running, and not only running for elected office, but winning. And for our audience, for context, this past election cycle, more than 1,000 LGBTQ Americans ran for office. And we at least know 330 of them won their general election. And this was compiled by one of the best organizations in the country, the LGBTQ Fund, Victory Fund, who they train, support, and advocate for queer candidates and really put their money where their mouth is. So Jared, talk to me a little bit about this. What are your political instincts telling you about why are we seeing more engagement in political life, especially elected office by LGBTQ Americans? And why do you think this change is happening now?
So Pat alluded to part of this earlier, that there still is, well, let's first recognize this. We lost an entire generation of gay men because our country refused to step up and prevent and educate and provide resources during the HIV/AIDS pandemic. But there is still a generation from that time period and before who are much older, who live, you know, what Pat alluded to as more of a closeted life. There are a lot of folks, though, that are younger and getting younger and younger as it goes, who are coming out earlier and who aren't afraid to live their life openly. We just saw a study come out this past week that over 70% of Americans now support gay marriage. It's the highest number it's ever been. I think what that shows is that as more people come out and as the general population has somebody in their lives who identifies as LGBTQ and who they love and who they get to know even more, and they understand that, this is who you are, they become more comfortable with the entire LGBTQ community. So it's been a long time coming where I think we've finally seen the shift occur where not only can gone are the days where it was just a bunch of gay staffers on political campaigns because all they could do was be the staffer. And now they can actually stand up and they can be the candidate, because in addition to wanting our elected bodies to look like our general population when we refer to race, when we refer to gender, when we refer to economic standing, we want an equal voice at the table, or at least a percentage based off our population in the general, population of our country to be LGBTQ. And so I think for a population who's had to mask part of themselves for a long time in their life and who had to find a new kind of confidence in who they authentically were when they come out, the ability to take that confidence and run for office and advocate for their communities and say, I can stand up for you. I know what it's like to be overlooked. I know what it's like to be looked down upon. I know what it's like to say, I'm not sure if I fit in here because institutions don't make me feel like I fit in here. So it doesn't matter, how our differences maybe define us, but the fact that we can say, in my own way, I have felt a struggle and that I've been able to overcome, I think makes these people great leaders. I think we're going to see more out folks come forward. I hope we start to see more in South Carolina. I think the time is right. I think we're getting very close to maybe some candidates jumping in at higher levels of government than we've seen before who are openly gay, and they're not going to be afraid to say it. But what that means, though, is we need Democrats to back these people, because they're going to face some fierce opposition from folks in the community who put it nicely, just aren't nice. And so we need your support. We need you to provide money to these campaigns, to get out and vote for them in primaries, to knock on doors for them, because it takes one person to get in and kind of break down that barrier in South Carolina for others to follow. And I don't mean that to insinuate that we don't have out folks in our state house right now. We do. I may not disagree with how he votes on a lot of things, but we do have an openly gay man in the state house. Just maybe not somebody who's going to go to bat for our community in a way that I think is appropriate.
Thank you for that, Jared. And I think you're spot on with your assessment that we're seeing a new generation able to live more freer because of the generation before fighting, and unfortunately, like you mentioned, dying for people to wake up and see that we belong. And we are just an equal part of your community. We're your sister, we're your brother, we're your favorite uncle, usually the gunkle, or your favorite aunt. So I think that that's so valuable what you shared there. Pat, I want to go to you because you come from an amazing political family. Your mom has been resting in power, the late Liz Patterson, since 2018, but she was a United States Congresswoman, the only woman, to serve in Congress since Nancy Mace, who does not hold a candle to your mama. But talk to me about growing up in a political family. How did that shape the way you organize or advocate? Because if you ever see one of your shows, you're organizing while you're performing, and it's beautiful to watch. So talk to me a little bit about that.
Well, first of all, thank you for the kind words about Mom. That's actually her as a little girl looking over my shoulder right now. So she's never far from my heart. But most of the folks in the upstate, of course, know Mom as their former Congresswoman. But I'm also very proud to be the grandfather or be the grandson of her dad, who was former governor of South Carolina, Olin Johnston, and former U.S. Senator, and the only man to have ever defeated Strom Thurmond in a general election. So I take a little pride in that too. But I come from a history and a tradition of public service. And Mom was always very clear about that. Politics is the means to an end. That end is public service. When she was in the grocery store and someone would come up to her and ask for help with an issue, she wasn't in the office. She wasn't even on the clock, but she was a public servant and she helped. When she left office, she continued to help people. And I'm very proud to say that the last cause she championed was within our church. I was raised United Methodist, and my mom worked tirelessly to make sure that the Methodist Church, at least our congregation, was inclusive and loved all of her children equally. So I had that example growing up of being a good community member. Encouraging your fellow community members who are like-minded to join you and amplify your voices to make where you live a better place. And just to sort of piggyback on what Jared was saying about our elected officials, I'm very proud to serve on the board of the South Carolina Equality Political Action Committee. And our primary focus is getting LGBTQ plus people elected. And I'm super proud to say that one of our community members who is holding elected office is with us tonight, serving on the Charleston County Consolidated School Board, Ms. Duggins. But you're joined down there in Charleston by Sheriff Graziano. And when we started listing our elected officials at our last meeting, we only thought we had 5 in South Carolina: Sheriff Graziano, Regina, Representative Elliott in Greenville. And someone said, we know there's another one. And I said, there are multiple other ones. And I can now say, Erica Brown, a woman of color, serves on the Spartanburg City Council. Lauren, South Carolina, has an openly gay mayor, and he and his partner live in a historic home in Lawrence, South Carolina. So Nathan Sin is our first openly gay mayor. Greenwood has an openly gay city councilman, and the coroner in Richland County is a member of our community. And those are just the ones that I know of. But it goes to what Regina said earlier: representation matters. And that's how we make our community a better place. We support our brothers and sisters who are looking to run for elected office. We volunteer on their campaign, or we make a contribution, or we share something on social media that helps support their initiatives. And we're going to get more people elected. We're going to have people like us at the table making the decisions that make our city, our county, our state a better place to live. And again, that's a lesson that I learned watching my mom and my father. I've got to give credit to Dad. He never held elected office, but my father, who was an attorney in Spartanburg for many years, always was there to support my mother and to help in his own way, provide legal advice, pro bono, or to serve on a community organization committee or fundraising drive. So I think if there's any lesson that I learned being raised in the amazing family that I was so blessed to be born into, is it's the lesson of Spider-Man. To those who have great power comes great responsibility, and we all have power. We're members of a community, we're members of a family. We've got to use the power that we've been given responsibly to look out for our fellow man, to lift them up. And when we see injustice, speak out. When we see someone who needs care, we provide that. And when we see a problem, we come together and find ways to fix it. So I just think that in some small way, what I'm able to do on stage is use performance as sort of a bully pulpit. It's very hard to ignore a 7-foot-tall, loudmouth drag queen. But I always do try and use that platform, which I've been so blessed to have now for 22 years, to use it wisely and use it to inspire young people to get out there and make the world a better place. If anybody follows me on Facebook as Pat Patterson, you know that I have a hashtag, spread happiness. And each post that I try and make on Facebook, that's what I try to do. I try and come from a positive place and inspire others to learn from that same space. Too easy for us to tear each other down. That's not what we're here for. It's all about lifting each other up. And so with Mom looking over my shoulder, as well as a pretty good president, oh, and a Democratic donkey too, I just noticed that. I feel like I've got a pretty good team behind me right now.
You most certainly do. And it's great when I was coming up in Democratic politics, being in the office, hearing the way the office volunteers spoke about your mother. When she passed, we had the story from the news up for a long time. And I read that article so many times. And I just love how consistent you are, Pat, because I pulled this. When the newspaper asked for a quote, you said, "I ask that everybody, as they remember my mother, remember the public servant and honor her by doing something good to make their community a better place." And as she's looking over your shoulder, know you are doing that every day. So she and your dad taught you very well, Pat. So thank you. That was awesome. I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Miss Gina, I'm going to go to you and ask you to talk to me in a little different tone. You started to talk about the difficulty that you faced in dealing with the senseless murder of a trans woman in your community. Talk to me about the transgender community and how that impacted the work that you do, and also what that experience taught you about inclusivity within our own community.
That was really tough. We were just starting Charleston Black Pride. And I think within a matter of 3 months, to lose Denali Stuckey to a senseless murder in Charleston had us look in the scope of what was going on. 2021 was really rough. Losing 28 transgender or gender nonconforming individuals made me even take a stance in running for a legislative seat, because I felt that the voices are not there for the LGBTQ speaking on this hate crime bill. I have stood real hard with Wendell Gilliard, who is the head of this bill currently in our state. And I still am rallying behind him to know the severity and the seriousness of why this bill needs to be approved. I don't know if people know that last week there was an incident downtown Charleston with they're still trying to finish and finalize this incident, but there was an attack and they're calling it a hate crime bill, a hate crime. And they're wishing that there was a bill in place so that when this is finalized, it can be handled the way that it should be. A male was attacked and called some slurs. So it's still happening. And I feel that with Charleston Black Pride, we're trying to educate and we're working with, because law enforcement has not been great in the LGBTQ community, but I'm thankful to have worked with the chief of police in North Charleston and Charleston to let them know that we are not tolerating this here in our city. So as a leader and a voice here, I'm glad to see that Christian Graziano, I was one of her biggest supporters to get her in the seat, to let her know that we want to make sure that the LGBTQ community has supports in place when it comes to hate crimes, and that is just not going to be tolerated in our city. It's still a work in progress. I feel that the safety of LGBTQ individuals is one of our highest things with Charleston Black Pride, because as we have events, we try to make sure where the location is, to make sure that there are armed police officers as well as undercover, because we never know whom is going to attend these events with a hate as their motive. So we're cautious about what we do. I feel that everyone has a right to live their lives the best way they want to display it, and that no one has a right to pick and choose whom should live versus whom shouldn't, or whom should walk in their truths and whom shouldn't. So knowing that we are in this kind of society that we have to face these challenges and stigmas, I'm constantly working with AFA, which is the Alliance for Full Acceptance, an organization who deals with the political aspect of LGBTQ and the laws in the state. So when we actually had the trans woman murdered, we had a rally, we had candlelight vigils, just to let people know that we need supports here. It's real. We're not just hearing about it in other cities. It actually happened here in Charleston. And she was a person who was very close to one of my board members, family members. So it really hit home. And we wanted to make sure that we honored her the best way possible. And we're still fighting. We're still going to keep fighting until this bill is passed. But even with the bill being passed, we need to make sure that it's actively being used and protecting those that need to be protected, which is a lot of people of color and those that are a part of the LGBTQ, especially the trans community.
Well, Jean, I think you hit on a couple of things, but you really talked to the intersectionality that so many in our community face. Because we are in a marginalized community already as LGBTQ, but some people have additional layers on that. So talk to me when you're seeing young folks come into your organization. What are some words of encouragement or advice that you're giving to help affirm them, to give them that place of welcoming so that they know you're a safe space and you're a person they can trust?
Love is love. And I try to live and walk as truthfully as possible. With me being an educator, as well as being a leader in the community, I have to show them the transparency that it's not easy, but I'm still fighting for them. I'm still running that race. I'm not being silenced because I'm not letting fear get the best of me. It's not easy. It comes with a large package, and sometimes it's hard for me to kind of let go of that because I'm an empath, so I carry a lot of people's feelings and emotions, but I know that I'm here for a purpose. And so I just feel that my purpose is greater than any pain that I can ever endure. So in order for me to get these youth to understand that sometimes someone has to be sacrificed in order to make change, then I will be that change agent. And so I'm just hoping that with my words and the more that I keep speaking and being upfront and vocal about the issues that are going on within our communities, that it can help others. So I let them know that it's real out here. It's real. And I let them know that if you don't have family, come to our organization. We are your family.
I love that. That's one of I think the beautiful things about our community is family is who you choose it to be. Some of us are born with it, and that is wonderful, but we can also add to the wonderful fabric of our family. Jared, I want to go to you, and Gina kind of hit on this, and I think a couple of you have talked about it. Talk about some of the health disparities that we see, whether that's reproductive justice or affirming healthcare or mental health, which you hit on beautifully before. Talk about what you see and some of the solutions that you think can help to alleviate some of these problems.
Yeah, so I'll preface this with I'm not a medical or a health expert, so please do not perceive anything I say as the direction you should take your medical care in. But what we see a lot in our community is kids who are growing up, and even young adults and adults who are growing up and trying to grow into themselves, and they feel, typically your process starts with I feel different. You just know that something's different. And working through your feelings and who you are, and then for folks to come out, we see higher rates of mental health struggles, just percentage based across our community. We see more folks who struggle with depression. We see higher rates of suicide. We see higher rates of anxiety across our community. And a lot of it's just because you spent years hiding your authentic self and constantly living a life of walking on eggshells, and then walking into a room where you had to put on an act and be an actor to fit into whatever scenario that was, whether it was with your family or in your entire community growing up. And so that takes a mental health toll on folks. And adequately funding mental health is not a problem we only have in the LGBTQ community. It's an American problem. We do not adequately support folks who are seeking mental health assistance. And so what that means is that there are hundreds of thousands of folks, if not millions across our country, who need mental health assistance and who can't get it because of our poor healthcare system, or because of the way that we don't build mental health into their current insurance programs, or just the lack of mental health professionals in their community. Add an extra layer onto that of what LGBTQ folks are going through, and them trying to find a mental health care professional who understands our community and understands our struggles and is sympathetic, or at least can connect with them on a human level about those struggles, is even tougher. And that's not even diving into the fact that we don't offer very much medical support for our trans community. We make it extremely hard for our trans community to seek the medical attention they need to achieve the body that makes them feel like themselves. So every step of the way that allies and straight folks are feeling that our healthcare system has let them down, just add another layer to that. And that's what the LGBTQ community faces every single day. It's a compounding problem. It's a problem that is not going away when we don't adequately fund healthcare across the board. And we have to find a way to make healthcare accessible and available for everybody for all types of treatments that they need. We cannot let Republicans pick and choose culture battles for what we do and don't cover based off what their perceived vision is on what a real American looks like, or what a real person is.
Thank you for that, Jared. And I really love the way you said that mental health issue goes beyond just our community. It is an issue that we need to destigmatize and let everyone know that it's okay to seek help. Doesn't mean you're weak. It actually means you're ready to face things that are tough and challenging. So I appreciate you sharing that. Pat, I really would love for you to talk about the role of safe spaces in our community. So you've traveled the state, you've traveled the country, and you've been to the gay bars, and you've been to the community centers, and we have Harriet Hancock, which many people don't know about, in Columbia, which is one of the most institutional organizations that we have that's needed. Talk about the importance of that and how you see that playing out in the community as we continue to grow our demographics here in the state.
Well, the Harriet Hancock Center, for folks who don't know, it started as the LGBTQ Community Center in Columbia and was originally the home of South Carolina Gay and Lesbian Pride movement, going back to the history lesson. Several years ago, the Hancock Center and Pride split, and Pride became the festival and parade organization that is headed up by Jeff March, and they do year-round programming. The Hancock Center has become the community center for the Midlands area of Columbia. But we also have community centers in Charleston, the Equality Hub, which is located at the edge of North Charleston. It houses the offices of AFA that Regina mentioned earlier, the Alliance for Full Acceptance, as well as Charleston Pride, not to be confused with Charleston Black Pride, and with We Are Family, which is the youth organization. And We Are Family also has their thrift shop located there, where people can donate items and also purchase items. They also have free support for gender affirming items as well, for folks in our trans community who don't know where to shop or don't feel comfortable shopping in certain stores. In the upstate, we have the Uplift Outreach Center in Spartanburg. And I believe, and I'm going to get the name wrong, and so somebody in Greenville is going to have to help me out. My friend Laura Davis just sent me a message, and they are opening an LGBTQ affirming health and wellness center in Greenville this month. And Laura's a former student of mine. That's why I gave her a shout out. But these spaces are popping up around the state, but we still can't make our schools safe spaces. Our teachers still can't talk about certain aspects of the LGBTQ plus community. We can't discuss LGBTQ plus history. I have a kindergarten friend who is a teacher who did a class on rainbows and had the children make rainbows, and a parent lodged a complaint because it appeared to be gay propaganda. Well, it was, but it was just rainbow. It wasn't a flag, but it was a gay teacher teaching a lesson on the importance of all the different colors. So I think safe spaces takes on a lot of different definitions. Is it a safe space in a local community for a kid who's just realizing that he's different and doesn't know who to talk to or where to turn? Is it a safe space in a community for a couple who's just moved to a new town and are looking for ways to meet new people, or looking for a neighborhood to live in where they'll feel safe and their family will be affirmed, or at least not the victim of violence? Is it a safe space in so much as we don't have those acts of violence? I mean, it breaks my heart when I see news stories about young people who are victims of violence or have chosen self-harm, because that lets me know that those kids aren't safe. And as a teacher, and I know, Gina, you're in the same boat as an educator, our primary focus is that next generation and making them feel okay, feel safe, feel that they can be who they want to be. And so I hearken back to a quote from the famous former Speaker of the House, Tip O'Neill. He used to always say, all politics is local. And when it comes to our community, all safe spaces are local. We need to make sure in the communities that we live in, whether it be Anderson, Abbeville, Horry, Beaufort, or Greenville, that we make those spaces available and we let people know about them. When Jared was talking about health disparities earlier, I couldn't help but think about the state that we live in and all of the different layers of disparity. Just because of the county you live in, you have less access to quality education, to healthcare, and to so many other resources. Because of the color of your skin, or the neighborhood you live in, or the job you have, or the family you were born into, you are straddled with those disparities. Now add on top of that being a member of the LGBTQ plus community. It makes it so much harder. And so we've got to utilize modern technology. We have to utilize social media. We have to utilize the smartphone that every little kid has in their hands. We have to find ways to get information out there. We have to talk. We have to share. And so one organization that I'm so proud to support, and I've been a supporter of theirs for years, I go to participate in their national fundraising talent show every December. It's an organization called the Trevor Project. And for anyone who doesn't know, the Trevor Project is the only national suicide prevention hotline, and now expanded services, solely devoted to saving the lives of LGBTQ plus young people. That's all they do, and it's free. They have a 1-800 number, 1-800-4-TREVOR. They have online services, including live chat, text help, and they can be found online. They can be found on Facebook and all social media platforms at The Trevor Project. And letting people know about Trevor so that conversations can happen. I mean, Regina, I was just out at Northwoods Mall this weekend, and one of the stores out there has a sign in the window that a portion of their proceeds for selling a t-shirt this month would go to the Trevor Project. So I marched myself up in this women's clothing store and bought myself a t-shirt that didn't fit me because they didn't have a larger size and I'm a full-figured girl. But I wanted to buy that shirt and talk to them about their support of the Trevor Project. And while I was in that store, a mother came up to me and asked me for more information. And about that time, she grabbed a friend of hers who was an older woman. And the older woman said, I'm going to tell my daughter about that. She has someone at school that needs to know about this. And I'm thinking, all I did was go in and buy a t-shirt and start talking. But I shared with you and I shared with you, and y'all are going to take it out into the world and share those resources and create a safer space for just one more kid. But that one kid's life is so valuable. And so for me, that's where it starts. Keep it local, keep it focused, create those safe spaces one child at a time, one adult at a time. I look out, I just took my dog for a walk when I got home. I don't fly flags at my house. I don't have a flagpole, but I've got 3 neighbors. 2 of them are straight allies who are flying the pride flag this month as a show of support. And one of them is showing our current pride flag because they knew all of the meaning behind it. They knew the importance of our trans representation. They knew the importance of representing people of color. And I loved having that moment on my street. And so to everyone out there, whether you're a Greenville County Democrat or, you know what, I'll even let my Greenville County Republicans and my independents creep in on this lesson. And don't think I'm not going to share this with them, because Representative Elliott, I'm talking to you. You can be a good ally to our community. You don't have to always be a traditional Republican. Help save lives, help change the world, and do it one flag at a time, one conversation at a time, and do it to make the generation behind us have a life a little bit easier than the life we've had. And I'm going to get off my soapbox now. And I also need to clarify, this is iced tea in a wine glass. So if anybody thinks that I'm getting drunk, it's not. I just drink out of a wine glass because it makes me feel classy.
Even if you were, that's okay, though, too, because we're fun here. This is a fun atmosphere. And I love the way you said that. One of the things I wanted to continue this conversation on is we are all young at heart, but there are so many changing things in our community that when I was coming out are completely different. And I was sharing with someone the other day, you know, I'm dating myself a little bit, but in the late 2000s, pronouns, though there's a long history of pronouns, and I will get into that a little bit later, it's not a new thing, it wasn't the top of conversation that it is now. So I love, Pat, the way you talked about educating people. So I'm going to go to Gina first and then Jared. Talk about how you guys take on that process of educating people, whether that's people you see are genuine or people you see are just trying to antagonize. I'd love to hear your opinion because I'm sure all of us have had both of those type of interactions.
One, when I feel that people are not knowing, I actually tell them. I mean, I've had plenty of people tell them, well, why don't you Google it? Why don't you go and do some research, you know? But I feel that it's best that they actually hear it from me because they'll know what my story is, and not have to get it from somewhere that may not be credible, just may not show that authenticity authenticity. So I just want to make sure that I'm giving them the real facts. But those that are just trying to nitpick and just want to add into the stigmas, then I'll challenge them. You know, what is really the situation or the problem? And I think that goes to my good religious folks. I tend to talk with them a lot because I feel that they speak another way in saying that God is love for all, but then they can shun. So I don't understand how they speak with two tongues. So, you know, I'm constantly having those conversations. And I mean, we can agree to disagree, but I'm big on respect. One was my brother. Not really convincing him, but really getting him to understand whom I am. And we've having two other siblings in our family who were closeted at the time, and him seeing me living my life out and proud. And in the last few years, as I stepped out more in the forefront and didn't hide, he became accepting of whom I am, you know, and what whom I love. And if he doesn't see me being very active in pride, like this year, he said, I don't see you doing as much as you did last year. What's going on? It made me feel great, because he's actually paying attention. And I remember how he was with my other siblings. He wasn't as in tune, but I think it was because of whom I showed him for me to be. You know, I walk in my truth and I don't let anyone silence me.
I love that. I didn't like Marianne Williamson for president, but I did like Marianne Williamson outside. And she has this great quote. And it says, when we unconsciously step out, we're releasing and freeing up other people to really step out in there. So you just being who you are is freeing for not only members of your family, but other people to say, oh, she's doing it. I can do that too. So I love that you're bringing it in a real way to people where it's not this abstract concept or abstract thing I'm reading on the screen. This is Gina, homegirl that you know, and now we're talking, having a conversation. So I love that. Jared, I want to kick it to you and share some of the same things when folks are approaching you.
Yeah, I mean, I think like any situation, it's situational. It's based off who you're interacting with. If it's somebody who I'm close with and have a relationship with, like Gina, I'm more than willing to have a conversation, to really ask questions, to dig deep, to figure out where these feelings or thoughts are coming from these individuals that I'm interacting with. Most of the time, they're just unaware of myself or the community or what we're really talking about. And Gina mentioned this, that there are kind of two schools of thoughts on this. Some people say, you know, these individuals are not worth my time and my labor. They need to go educate themselves. And I think folks can totally do that. If for your own mental health, if for your own reasons you need to say, I don't have it in me to do this, that is perfectly fine. I know for me, I would much rather folks that I know and I have a relationship with have these conversations with me and get to hear from me and get to put a face that they know and a person they know alongside whatever issue for my community they're struggling with. If it's folks who I'm not as familiar with or I don't know, and you know that they're attempting to, you know, post something online or send a tweet that's meant to provoke me, you know, I typically let those go. I assume that folks at some point in their life will have a family member or a close friend who comes out, and they will have to reckon with these internalized thoughts or mischaracterizations or just not being educated on the issues. They will have to overcome all of that when somebody close enough to them makes that issue hit home and makes them want to have a reckoning with those issues. I can't force someone that I don't have a strong relationship with to have that reckoning. They need to have somebody closer in their personal orbit for them to want to do that. And that's really the case on a lot of issues. I think that's how folks overcome issues that they may face with abortion or any other issue. It's when you talk to somebody you care about and get to know them and have a discussion with them, that you are able to move past whatever insecurities or internalized privileges or systemic privileges that have built up inside of you that you still possess.
And I think we struggle uniquely here with what Gina hit on, and I think we all inherently know the role that Christianity plays and dictates in South Carolina society. And I'm proud to say that I'm a Christian, but I really feel like I'm a Christ follower, the Jesus Christ follower, the one that loved and hung out with people that were undesirable to what the world standards was, but were the most loyal and beautiful people that he can be around. And I think we have to continue, and Jared, you do this, Pat, you do this, and Gina, you do this, confront those people when we know it's something that affects us, but also don't let those detractors or haters, I hate to be simplistic, but stop us, because their goal is to detract us, is to get us frustrated so we stop fighting. So I love that you're able to balance that. Okay, let it go, water off a duck's back, where, okay, now I'm going to engage because I know this engagement will change something. Pat, I want to start with you, and then we're going to go around. So I'll go Pat, and then Jared, and then Gina. Talk to me about, and if you guys can keep it, each of you 3 minutes, make your pitch for the need for people like Joe Manchin to pass the Equality Act. People like Kristen Sinema, I know she's fighting for us, to not only pass it, but to convince their Republican colleagues the importance of something like the Equality Act.
The very fact that we have to convince anyone that equality is something we have to fight for, that how anybody is against that. I hear my late mother's voice right now. She said, no one in this world wants poor education, bad roads, violence. We all want equality, and it's the means to the end that we struggle on. Our Republican colleagues on the other side of the aisle see the path to equality as different. And I'm not going to paint either party with a big brush, because I love the fact that the Democratic Party is such a big tent. And so to the more conservative members of our party, whether they be senators from West Virginia or bisexual senators from Arizona, I hope they will use their power to have a thoughtful dialogue and bring people over to the side of equality. Talk to us about what your reservations are. Why are you so afraid of equality? There are basic tenets of the bill that we all agree on. If there is something specific that you are opposed to or that you are having problems with, let's have that dialogue. Let's work together. Leave out all of the other things. Don't, I always, my mother taught me a phrase that is popular in government. A lot of times things will be attached to a bill that are not germane to that bill, meaning someone will make an amendment about something completely non-related just to sabotage the bill. Well, cut all that out. Have a conversation about the Equality Act. What is it, Senator Manchin, that you don't like about equality? Don't talk to me about what I can do for roads in West Virginia. I don't use this as a bargaining chip. I want you to tell me what it is specifically. I want you to go on the record and tell me what problem you have with equality. And I want to have a dialogue with you and see if we can find some common ground to bring you closer to the middle, closer to a vote for yes. And I think that's the same thing that we should do here on the local level and in the state level. When Jeff Ayers and the South Carolina Equality team go to the State House to lobby our state legislators, that's what they're doing. They're having those tough conversations, but they're trying to find compromise. That's the biggest problem right now in our entire political system, is we are not willing to embrace compromise. Everyone gives a little for us to get something so great. So Senator Manchin and the rest of you who are holding things up in Washington, come to the table. Let's have some conversations. Let's forget about all the other stuff on the side. And let's see if we can get the Equality Act passed before the end of the year.
I love it. Gina, I'm going to go to you on this one.
This sticks kind of dear and true to my heart. I've always spoken about being that I have been discriminated against 3 times. One, because I'm a woman, I'm a Black woman, and I'm a Black lesbian woman. I'm constantly a strong believer that it's time to have the equality bill passed so that we can have a support system that's essential for queer people like myself living in this area. Because it has been historically known that this hostility towards people who are of color has been hard fighting in the South. And I feel that once we can be able to show that women are just as strong as men and that we can have equal pay and equal rights, that this will be a closure to a lot of doors that have been closed and busting through the glass ceilings that needs to be done. So yes, it's time that we move forward. And I'm hoping that it's done soon.
Excellent. Jared, can I get your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, Pat and Gina are completely correct here. To be a public official, it really just means that you are a voice and a leader for your community. To not be willing to go to the table with the courage to publicly share your opinions on legislation, your concerns with legislation, what you think needs changed on that legislation, but to just hide behind a Twitter account or a press release and say, I'm not voting for this, or to hide behind an op-ed to say, I'm not voting for this, and to not give a rationale for why you're doing it, is cowardly leadership. And we don't need cowardly leaders. We need bold, brave people from all of our communities who look and sound and live in our communities, who live the same lived experience we do, to step up and be public officials. And if that means that at times, Pat, I might take a different approach from you. If at times that means that we need to have a discussion within our party about replacing folks who aren't being bold, courageous leaders, then I'm totally fine doing that. And I think folks in West Virginia are having that conversation. They should continue to have that conversation. Folks in Arizona should be doing the same. We also have to elect folks purely at the U.S. Senate level who believe in abolishing the filibuster. It is built on a racist foundation that was meant to give white people in areas with white people more power than others. And to hide behind that as your reason for not supporting legislation, you don't want to remove the filibuster. So you're going to keep a racist relic in place in order to be a cowardly leader and not support legislation. It doesn't sit well with me. So I hope we get more, real, hardworking folks in positions of power at all levels of government, so that we can just have common sense discussions. We can say, what do you not like about this? What do you like about this? And we can actually get things done. Because let me tell you, we have regular people who sit on committees that I'm involved with at work, on committees around Greenville. They have to find compromise. They have to find a way to get projects done. It's only in Washington, D.C. where you're allowed to show up to your job and just not let things happen, but you get to keep coming every day. It's absolutely ridiculous. And until we get rid of some of these folks, unfortunately, I don't think we're going to get a lot of this legislation through.
No, I appreciate what you're saying, and you're right. We have to be able to elect people at the national level, and I love we're matching it with what Pat said, and then we have to hold our local people and keep their feet to the fire. It's you believe and you say you go to church on Sunday, well, then support inclusion, support love, support equality, because those are things that you should be leaving your Sunday church service with, not a hate-filled, I'm better than you, you're the other. We usually have a great portion of our program called One More Thing. So, Ms. Gina, I want to start with you. Tell us one thing you wish the ally community would know better to understand the struggles that the LGBTQ community goes through.
Basically, help amplify our voices, don't silence our voices, and know that representation does matter.
Beautiful, very succinct and to the point. I love it. You are getting some snaps over here. They need to make a snap emoji on Zoom. But that's because they need more gays in their, I think, in their technology office to add that feature. Pat, I'd love to go to you next. One thing that you would like to share that would help our community that you think allies should know.
Be like Regina. And I'm very serious. Regina saw a need in her community and she stepped up. Regina has talents in specific areas and she uses those talents to fix problems. Regina saw a vacancy on a ballot and she offered herself for public service. So, back in the 80s, it was be like Mike. In the 2020s, we're gonna be like Regina. So there's your lesson for today, people.
I love it. And thank you for attending his TED Talk, everyone. That was lovely. That was so lovely. Jared, I want to go to you.
I mean, it's very similar to Pat said. It is be like Regina. It's the fact that we need more Black and brown folks in public office at every level of government. We need more openly LGBTQ plus folks in public office at every level of government. We need more women. We need more folks from our Native American communities. We need our government to look like our communities, and they don't right now. So when people who step forward, who look like they represent your community, who share your lived experience, who understand the struggles that you and your family are facing, when they step up and put their name in the hat, it takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of prep work, a lot of conversations with their families. Please support them. Please volunteer for their campaigns. Please donate money to them. Please just offer to buy them coffee or a drink to keep their mental health in check. But let's elect more people like Regina who truly represent our communities at every level of government.
And if they need help, have them reach out to the SC Equality Political Action Committee, because we just elected a new chair and his sole focus is on talking to those people in our community who have been successful and finding out what they did to get elected so we can amplify their voices and their talents and their skills to help other people out there get elected. Our goal, by the way, and I don't think this is public, so Greenville County Democrats, you're the first to hear it. The South Carolina Equality PAC has set a goal in the next election cycle to double the number of openly LGBTQ plus elected officials in the state of South Carolina. Next 3 years, we're hoping to have a total of 14 openly LGBTQ plus elected officials, and that's at every level. So city council, school board, all the way up to, who knows, maybe we'll have an openly gay state senator or governor. No, we've got some good candidates for governor now. We'll wait and take the governor's mansion in a few years. Maybe I'll be governor and first lady all rolled up into one. But
that would, I want to watch that show. I feel like that's a reality show I would pay a lot of money to watch, sir. That would be amazing. One thing that Pat, I love the plug there. We could not get everybody because it is Pride Month. Everybody is so busy and booked, but I want to give a shout out to the Caroline Caldwells of the world who are doing phenomenal work with Upstate Pride. Ethan Johnstone with Pride Link. We talked about the Hancock Center. PFLAG is an organization that I wish I was aware of when I was younger, but people like Miss Leslie Johnson, who I just hug every time I see her, and so many others are on the ground really doing the work. Aid Upstate. These are organizations that need dollars. They provide so many free services. They're doing the education. They're doing the healthcare. We need to put our money where our mouth is and also recognize when someone is doing good, it's not about competition, it's supporting them, getting behind them and supporting them to continue to do that great work. I really want to thank Regina so much for coming. We gonna hang out, girl. We already talked about it, but I love you even more after this conversation. Pat, thank you so much. I do want to tell you, I did my research. I was there Tuesday night. You were phenomenal. As always, I like to do research for these things. And I just want to tell you the way you're able to balance being sassy as hell, but welcoming. You know when to diss someone, but also when to put that hand on a shoulder. And we're laughing, but that's a skill that your parents instilled in you. You know how to read a room. And that's so vital to our community because you know when you see whether it's Pat or Patio, it's a welcoming spirit. So I want to thank you for joining us and giving your advice. And Jared and I, y'all ran against each other for chair. And Jared is someone I've had so much respect for. Jared is immensely talented. And if I was going to lose for chair, I would be very happy to lose to Jared. But I know Jared's future is so bright. He is involved in so many things. But the thing I appreciate the most about Jared is his authenticity when he speaks on this issue. It's not about the ego. It's about moving our community forward. So Jared, thank you for your leadership. Thanks for being a friend. And I can't wait to see what we all do. Y'all get involved, support Gina, support Pat, support equality, and make sure you're affirming our community. A kind word goes a long way. A warm smile can change someone's life. Just acknowledging someone can prevent someone from committing harm to living a full, productive life. So every interaction, leave the person that you have in a better place. It's a pleasure. This is an amazing panel. Y'all drinks on me the next time we're all together. Thank you so much on behalf of my team. We have an amazing, amazing team here at GCDP, and I'm so fortunate to lead them, but I'm not alone. They do all the hard work for me. So thank you, team, and I hope you all have a great evening. Happy Pride, y'all. Thank you.